Hi guys, I'm Emily. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be taking you step by step through my process for painting this pair of beautiful mourning doves in a winter setting. I'm using a variety of paints today, so as always I'll list out all of the supplies I used in this video in the description below. To save time on the drawing today, I used transfer paper to do the sketch. Check out my transfer paper tutorial for more details on how to do this. My paper today is Arch's 140-pound rough press cotton watercolor paper, and I'm using a variety of Daniel Smith and Holbein paints. I have several round brushes by Richardson, Princeton, and Escoda. I also have 2 jars of clean water and paper towel. I spray my paints with a spray bottle to wet the paint and activate it, and then using my largest round brush, I wet the entire paper, just avoiding the dove's eyes and areas of the branches and tail feathers that will be left white. My first touch of color is a light wash of burnt sienna and yellow ochre, which I use to tint the birds' heads and bodies. Because the paper is wet, the colors bleed and flow. I'm using one of my favorite paint colors in the background. Still working wet and wet, this is Daniel Smith's Moon Glow, a special triple pigment paint that looks awesome in snowy scenes like this one. I add hints of Viridian. I love the versatility of a large round brush because I can use the point of it to paint carefully around the birds, and I can use the broad side of the brush to dab, blot, and create large brush strokes. The background will remain very loosely painted, and because it's all done wet and wet, it will look blurry and diffused. Using burnt umber, I drop in some details on the tree branch and use some of that same brown on the bird's body. While the background is still damp, I blot out some diffused snowflakes using a paper towel. I can also take clean water and touch the surface, allowing the water to bloom into snowflakes. You can also try this technique with alcohol or salt. I had one spot that darkened a little too much. I'll go in later and cover it with gouache. I used some more Moon Glow to darken small areas of the background. I'm loving this beautiful purple and green combination. Using my burnt umber again and my Escoda size 2 round brush, I paint some dark brown details on the branch and on the bird's head. The birds' heads are a lovely reddish brown. I use burnt sienna mostly for these areas. I add a light spatter of Moon Glow and paint in the first layer on the beaks. I use little bits of paper towel to cover the birds, then grab some white gouache on a worn-out toothbrush. I gently pull my thumb across the bristles. The paint is going to be lightly spattered across the background, giving the beautiful effect of snow. I also go in with a brush and add larger, more concentrated snowflakes, and cover up that ugly dark spot. Now that the background is finished, I can paint the details of the doves. I've switched to my Princeton Neptune size 8 round brush and carefully start adding darker paint to the head and feathers. My main colors here are burnt sienna and yellow ochre. I used some tiny hints of turquoise blue on the tops of the beaks. The eyes are very carefully painted with lamp black. The foot is cadmium red. I love that tiny pop of brilliant color in this otherwise fairly muted winter scene. I used black and burnt umber to paint the dark, hard-edged shadows around the neck feathers. Because the heads and the necks of the birds are the focal point, these areas need to be the most detailed and carefully painted. I work very slowly, constantly glancing at my reference photo for guidance. My size 2 Escoda brush is great for articulating the details of the tail feathers. The bluish-gray tail feathers are painted with watered-down indigo, and I use hints of lemon yellow in the feathers just below the branch. Painting realistic feathers just requires paying close attention to detail and checking that your values are correct. Also, be careful not to paint them all with dark, hard edges. Some of the feathers in the breast of the bird are lighter and softer. These I paint using the wet and wet technique. For the dark wing on our foreground bird, I paint a base layer with burnt umber. While that's drying, I add some more yellow ochre to the other bird and finish some of the feather details, mostly using burnt umber. I paint the foot on the first bird and darken the wing again. For details like the breast feathers, I often need to go back and forth between the two birds. While one area dries, I work on the other, and then I can come back to the dry area and add more details. The final step is to add the black feather shapes on my foreground dove. This really makes it stand out. I added just a couple spots of white gouache snowflakes over my birds, darken the branches a little, and call it finished. Altogether, this painting took about an hour and a half. If you like seeing how birds are painted, check out my video on how to paint a chickadee. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to subscribe if you're new here, hit the like button, and also turn on notifications so you never miss any new videos. I'll be posting new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, so be sure to check those out. If you're interested in learning more about moon glow paint, I also have a video about that, so check that one out. If you have comments or questions, leave those below, and I'll be sure to respond. And be sure to share this with any of your friends who are interested in learning watercolor. Thank you so much for watching today.